In today's video, I'm going to share with you some helpful warm-up tips for any level violinist. Hi, my name is Eric and I'm your guide to becoming a better violinist. When it comes to warming up on the violin, you have to remember that it's not just about warming up your fingers and your muscles. It's also a matter of warming up your instrument. You may be living in a place where there's a pretty cold climate and you want to make sure that you're not just warmed up with your fingers but your instrument, because if you're not warming up your instrument, then you're not going to get the maximum resonance that you're going to get out of your instrument. So I want to talk about some elements that help you warm up before you have a successful practice session. It all starts with understanding your posture. Of course, we've talked about this countless times on the channel, making sure that you have good posture. If you want to take a look at my last video on posture, I'm going to leave a link down over here or maybe in this tag right over here. So make sure that your posture is in good shape. That is element number one. But there are two ways to really think about warming up. You have to start warming up either with your right hand or with your left hand. Personally speaking, I like to warm up with the right hand because it allows me to warm up my instrument as well with the bow. What do I mean by that? All I do is having long bows. And you want to make sure you are doing this in a very smooth sounding fashion. You want to do it on all strings if you are capable of doing on all strings. So I would start with the A string. Even if you want to tune your violin, and when you're tuning your violin, you're also practicing the smooth sounds on your violin. Very important that we establish that. So when we have the A string, we're also doing it on the D, G, and E. And while you're doing the long bows, I want to emphasize that you also want to be mindful of where your arm height is. We have a total of 7 arm heights. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's the reason why it's very funny. I have a lot of students who think it's like 4 right away. But you also have to keep in mind the arm height on 2 strings at the same time when you're playing a double stop. So just want to keep that in mind when you're warming up. So when you're doing long bows, you want to make sure that you have a straight bow. Straight bows can be achieved by looking at your bow and that your bow is parallel to the bridge. So we don't want a bow that's this way or that way. I have many videos on the channel regarding why you need a straight bow. So when you do a straight bow, you're trying to get the best contact point on down bows and up bows. Now, a great element of long bows that you can practice, I would set a timer on the side on your music stand, and I would do maybe 20-second or 30-second bows. So essentially what you would do is you would hold your bow down and up for 30 seconds at a time. And what you're teaching your arms to do and your muscles and your brain, how to really relax your body when you're playing smooth bows. So when you're really doing a 30-second bow, you're trying to get a smooth sound the entire way up to the tip of the bow. And of course, you also want to emphasize this on the up bows. Down bows are a lot easier than up bows because of the gravity. Gravity is really easy for down bows. Up bows, they can get a little tricky. But this is a great way to warm up because you're teaching your arm from the very beginning on how to not have a shaky bow. So a lot of you struggle with that on the channel, and I remember replying to some comments regarding that issue. So when you do a down bow, I see a lot of times, even in my private lessons, you have a lot of shaky bow. So when you do long minute bows, 30-second bows, or even sometimes 1-minute bows, you're teaching your body how to really iron that sound out. Now let's do a variation of an exercise with the right hand. So the right hand, we're doing long bows. We've established that. Now we want to make sure something that I've learned in my conservatory years and in my youth is you want to have a clear beginning and end of the note. And that is established by doing a really clear staccato. A staccato is essentially stopping in between notes. So when you're doing a down bow, you want to clear that sound out. And then you want to do the same thing on the up bow. Now I'm doing 2 bow strokes at a time. And what's great about this exercise, if you want to kind of hit 2 birds with 1 stone, you want to make sure you can do this with a G major scale, for instance, if you're a beginner. what that'll teach your right hand is to have the good grip on the up bows. That's very important. Down bows can be really easy. Now, also something to keep in mind when you're doing the down bows is that you don't want your arm to go behind your back. You want to focus in relation to the straight bows, you want to move your elbow slightly. It's impossible just to kind of keep it straight and keep it still, but you want to really focus on the forearm. And I suggest practicing in front of a mirror. If you don't have one, I suggest maybe going into your bathroom and just kind of feeling out what that looks like with the forearm. So when you do a down bow, actually maybe go back a little bit so that way you can see my forearm. You can see that my forearm and my forearm is doing a lot of the work. My elbow is not doing any of this. So when you are absolutely confident in that bow hold and bow grip and everything, you're trying to create a stoppage of the sound by stopping the bow. So when you stop your bow, you are actually trying to hear a resonance in your instrument. So I want you to listen closely to my instrument to see if you can hear that echo reverb sound. You can hear a little bit on the A string, but let me give you an example on the D string. So let's try that on the staccato. You can hear that the most on the D string, and then that is a proper way to really warm up with your right hand. And it's very simple. It just takes a couple minutes to really get into the frame of mind of you getting a really good violin sound before you have your practice session. We've talked about the right hand. Now, how do we really get ourselves to warm up the left hand? Well, we just talked about doing the staccatos with the scale, and that's another great way to do this warming up. So just doing a scale, it goes back to the philosophy that Dr. Suzuki says in his Suzuki books, in his method. Finger, bow, then go. It's a really simple technique and a really simple frame of mind to get into when you're warming up with your left hand. So when you're playing these fingers, you're placing the finger and then you're playing. Placing the finger, then playing. So when you do the staccatos in a lot of the Suzuki Book 1 songs, there's a reason why there's a lot of staccatos in the Suzuki book. Is so that way the student or the pupil can learn how to effectively put the fingers on the fingerboard. So that's one way you can do it, a scale with staccato. Now, let's say you are having trouble with one specific finger. Then I recommend that you have a lot of repetition on that finger. So let's say we are doing long bows and we're trying to do a first finger. And you're playing this first finger enough times where you are completely satisfied with that first finger. So what does it mean to be satisfied with the finger? It means that your intonation is consistent every time you put the first finger down. You are consistent in how the first finger is approaching the string and how it's being placed on the string. And lastly, you want to make sure you're getting a good sound from the left hand. Sometimes students, they don't really press down enough. So you want to make sure that you have just enough proper weight of the finger onto the string to really help out. So, and that's all you need. And then you can do that on all strings, of course. Now, another great element of this type of practice is that you can do variations of this practice. You don't have to just work on first finger. Oftentimes I see first finger being an issue, so that's why I bring it up. But let's say your third finger is an issue. Once we start getting to some pieces where you have to do like requirement of independent fingers, then maybe third finger could be a good practice warm-up. And what essentially I'm doing is I'm lifting the finger up and I'm putting it back down. And I'm doing this in a very slow manner because, again, this is a warm-up. This is not a way for me to really play fast right away. If Itzhak Perlman always says that if you practice slow, you forget slow. And I think this is completely relevant to warming up as well, because if we practice fast in the very beginning, we're setting ourselves up for failure in the practice room. So you want to really be intentional with how you're placing all the fingers on the fingerboard, because that's going to really help you in your music. It's going to just really speed up the process of your learning. So particularly in adult students, it's really interesting to see this in my adult students. With beginners who are maybe under the age of 5 or 6, it's really kind of easy to teach a student that age because they are still learning how to learn something. When you're dealing with students above the age of 50, 55, they've already lived a life. They know their learning style. So sometimes it's a humbling moment for them when I tell them, just practice slowly and you're gonna have more success doing that. Slow and steady is the best way to practice, because slow and steady will help you get those good tones on the violin. And I imagine you doing this for maybe 5 minutes. This is not, now this video is much longer, and once you start getting into a habit of practicing your warm-up, you'll kind of understand what you need to work on. So this is just the tip of the iceberg on what you can do. And my goal is to help you to become a better violinist, and to become a better violinist requires good warming up, because not only you're warming up your fingers and your muscles, but you're warming up the instrument. And within those 5 minutes of warming up, you're warming up the wood of the instrument so that way it can resonate more. Again, particularly when you are living in a colder climate, you want to make sure that your violin is warmed up so that way it can function properly. And again, my name is Eric, and I am dedicated to helping you become a better violinist. If you are new to the community, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out to help people like you become better violinists. If you're wanting to learn more about violin playing, I encourage you to maybe check out some other videos, or even check out some of my courses that I have available. I'm going to leave a link down to my Violin Academy online school, so that way you can take a look at some of the available courses that are on there. So please take a look at that. We really appreciate it. But if you're not ready to commit to a course yet, I recommend these videos.